Hi, my name is Jean-François Dugas. I'm the Executive Game Director on the Deus Ex franchise.
And I'm DeMarle, and I am the Executive Narrative Director on the franchise.
And I'm Jonathan Jacques-Belletête, and I'm the Executive Art Director on the franchise. There we go.
Well, it started a while ago. It started with the first meeting when we signed a deal with Titan. We had early discussions with their crew to bounce back ideas, etc. for the art book, for the comic book, for a novella and a novel, etc., etc. So it was really to get a good sense of each other, and for them also to get inspired by the universe that we were constantly building and evolving and everything.
And then for the Children's Crusade, specifically plotline, I think we had additional meetings, some of which were conference calls, and we talked about potential storylines that we could take that would help fill out some of the storylines and complement what's going on in the game. And then once we did that, we kind of settled on a direction for the first comic series to focus on TF-29, Jensen's new job in the task force, and one of his first missions. And then subsequently had meetings, again, mostly through phone calls, with the writer, Alex, and with the Titan Comic Books editor, Tom. And from there, it was, they were writing it, and we were approving manuscripts all the time.
Well, for the comic books cover designs, pretty much almost all the concept artists for the franchise were designing the covers. They each had like their own little thing going on, and then we reviewed it. We had like so many different propositions. Like each artist probably had I don't know, 5 or 6 propositions, and we looked at it. I looked at them with the marketing department, looked at them with Mary, with JF, and what happened is something that happens very rarely. Is that we liked them all. They were pretty much everything that my boys did was really, really good. So we had, we still had to kind of distill all the work into the 5 covers, I think, that we needed. So we chose them, and then we assigned them to, issue 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. That was the easy part. And then we realized that Titan wanted to do those alternative covers as well, right? That each issue would also have a second or third or fourth cover version, which is a thing that I think they do quite regularly in the comic book industry. So that was good because we had all these other concepts that we all like very much, and we had this opportunity to use them as well, right? So that's what we did. So again, it was just a matter of assigning them to different issues, and so the one that we have now is for issue number 1 is I mean, as dumb as it sounds, is the one that was assigned to issue number 1, and it's Adam fighting this Prague cop. That we find in the game. I mean, not necessarily this situation, but the character itself, the cop. And it's interesting because it allowed us to do a composition and put our characters, especially the cop, in a position and in an action pose that we don't really do in the game, right? We needed to adapt a little bit our action aesthetics, if you want, for comic books, which was quite interesting. So. The cop is very much also almost like a superhero on the cover. Like the way that we've built his anatomy and the way that he's kind of posed and whatever is not really something that you're going to see in the game in terms of what the cops do. But I think for a comic book cover, it worked really, really well.
And another thing that is interesting with the covers, like with the alternate versions you're talking about, we had the opportunity to explore like more meta version or more symbolic version of our universe, and put Adam Jensen into some context that represents the fight is going through, or like the weight on his shoulders and everything, like the one with he holds the planet, and there's a hand over it trying to crush him.
This Illuminati hand.
Exactly, and it's all part of the meta story of Adam Jensen
and the world as well, the state of the world. Yeah.
So it was really interesting to go in that direction and not just always have something that is literal and everything, that it was more artistic.
Which is usually what we do all the time. We try to always be quite literal, and that allowed us to be a lot more poetic.
It's something that we work directly with the Titan team, and the story, even though they fleshed it out, it was worked with the people here and everything, and to make sure that it was consistent, and it was telling a part of the story of Adam Jensen, because at the end of the Human Revolution and the beginning of Mankind Divided, there are 2 years that separate the two games, and there are many stories that we already have in the background that we want to tell over time, through whether it's through the games or through other medias. And with Titan and the comic book, it was a good place to at least tell a chunk of that story.
Yeah, and the approval process was really important too, because their first story idea didn't quite fit where we wanted to take the universe. It wasn't necessarily, it was a good story, but it wasn't necessarily resonating with the themes that we wanted to really push.
Yep.
And so then after reviewing that concept, we then said, well, I like certain parts of it, but can you take it in this direction? So A, it was very much a collaborative effort, and B, we were always there making sure that it is representing what we want for the franchise. And it's kind of fun working on all those alternate stories and all these things that are part of the canon, because now we can fill in a lot more storylines along the way. Almost
Okay.
all of them. Because the interesting thing is, at the end of Human Revolution, well, if you've played Human Revolution, Jensen was working in Detroit as the head of security for a biotech corporation, and now in Mankind Divided, 2 years later, he's no longer working for Seraph. In fact, Seraph Industries doesn't exist anymore. And he's now joined this task force. And he's working with a brand new set of people. And the comic book,
They're
you'll
a bunch
meet.
of assholes.
Not all of them. Not
Most-
all of them.
most, I-
Some of them have they're complex human.
They really get
beings.
under my skin, which is, it's all,
They have
saying
their
your writing is
secrets
quite
and
excellent.
they're
They really get to me. They really do, I'm not kidding. Despicable people.
Not all of them. But anyway, so when you play Mankind Divided, you're meeting a whole new cast of characters, and this comic book series is really Jensen's first mission with the task force. So everyone he's working with is new in this.
Actually,
series.
we brought back one character,
That's right.
Alex Vega from Deus Ex The Fall. She was introduced there, and now we learned that she works with I would say underground kind of a party that are trying to expose the Illuminati, and she works with Adam Jensen closely in the new game, and we deepen her character in the comic and also into other medias. But the goal is to make this character like a strong character that players can get into the game, but they can have other products as well that are going to make them understand a little bit more about who she is and everything. But she's probably one of the few returning characters.
So for the interior art, for the pages, it's kind of what we look for any art for Deus Ex, right? It's for any lengthy art, if I can say so, either a concept artist or an in-game artist or whatever. It's all about our pillars. So we needed someone who's really good at making very precise mechanical design, right? It's almost like an art form how we're dealing with it on the franchise, how you do anything from robots to weapons to augmentations and stuff like that. Someone who understands architecture very well as well. It's super important in the game. We don't do just random looking structures or buildings and stuff like that. There's also like a type of line, like in the sense that there's a lot of comic book styles that probably wouldn't have worked for Deus Ex. And it's super interesting because there's a slight cartoony style to the faces sometimes. Like Adam actually has like sometimes some kind of very interesting kind of distorted expressions, and it actually works really, really well, which is something that I wouldn't have thought at the beginning. But anyway, yeah, we just look for these type of precisions for mechanical design, for architecture, for representing futurism really well. It needs to have a certain grittiness, right? It shouldn't be too clean and whatnot. And as easy as it sounds, it really isn't. There's a lot of artists that if you look at them just first degree, it looks like they can handle these things, but then you really kind of dig deeper, they begin to do it, and it actually doesn't kind of gel as well as you were expecting.
And the fact that we also pay attention or give a lot of importance to the details makes it even more
That's
hard
very true.
work and everything. We don't like when it's just like kind of an abstract representation of. We really want to recapture really the all
And it's like that for
details
everything we
and
do, right? It's the same
yes.
with like Mary's writing, and we're a pain in the ass to work with, basically.
To sum it up.